very, very impressed with what Manet had done. They were impressed that he'd sort of thrown paint in the face of the salon, even though Manet was very depressed. Alfred Sisley, that was just out of place slide. Sisley was the only Englishman in the French Impressionists. And, Camille Pissarro, sorry. And Paul Cézanne. And Bertha Morisset. She wasn't actually there at the exhibition, but she would join their group later on. And there they all are sitting around, many of them are sitting around the master, Manet in the middle, you'll see Manet in the chair, Frederic Bazille standing, and far back, the kind of shy kid is Renoir. And they're all sort of paying tribute to the guy who started, they say started their movement. He never took credit. Manet never said he was an Impressionist, didn't want to be an Impressionist. So, Monet was so impressed with Luncheon on the Grass, he said, I'm going to do my own. He told all his friends, I'm going to do my own. I'm going to do a Luncheon on the Grass where everything is life-size. And he got a 20 by 20 foot canvas, and he started painting this. And he had a new girlfriend named Camille Dassu, and his friend Frederic Bazille, and they went all over the country, staying in hotels until they were thrown out or had to sneak out in the middle of the night with this 20-foot canvas. And Monet would paint his friends. All of these people, probably the guy sitting is Monet himself, but all the other characters are played by either Bazille or Camille. And this is in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris right now. I don't think he ever finished it because it was probably tough getting it on and off the train and sneaking out of hotels in the middle of the night with a 20-foot rolled up canvas. And this is en fleur. We stayed in that hotel, which he snuck out of, he says in one of his letters, the Cheval Blanc, the white horse, and had that painting with him. He and Camille were there. And this is also his hometown. He spent a lot of time there. Camille and Bazille was unusual. He was 6'6", and in that day that was really, really tall. And he was a doctor, so he actually had money, which was something that all of them did. Monet would just make these commitments to do something, and Bazille would go in. Who's going to pay for that? And Monet would say, "You are, of course." Bazille, a great painter in his own right. But Monet would get so obsessed with painting that he wouldn't pay attention to what was going on around him. And when he was painting that big painting near the forest at Fontainebleau, some athletes came into the field by the forest and were throwing a discus, and one hit him in the ankle and shattered his ankle. And this is Bazille's painting of Monet after he's put his friend's foot in traction and he's healing from being hit in the ankle with the discus. Monet would go into, he went into Gare Saint-Lazare, one of the bigger stations in Paris, and he was penniless at the time, penniless. He lived in an apartment on Montmartre with Renoir. They could afford like one piece of coal a day, and they would let the model that they would hire with whatever money they had left sit by the stove, and then they would sit with all bundled up with mittens and stuff and paint her all day, and basically live off of day old bread that they could get and so forth. But he walks into the station of Gare Saint-Lazare, and he says, I am the painter Monet, and I have decided to paint your station. And I will paint, I was thinking about Gare du Nord, but your station has more character. I'll need you to fire up all the engines and let the steam go all at once, because I am going to attempt to paint steam. And the manager of the station went, well, but of course, I'll do that. And he did that, and Monet painted at least 2 of these that I know of, and I think 4. And nothing really happened for these guys until about 1873, when they go, you know what, nobody's ever going to show our awful pictures. We're going to do our own exhibition. And they didn't have a name for them, but they put all these, the new painting is what they were calling themselves, because none of them really painted alike. They painted side by side, but they didn't paint alike. And they did this exhibition, and it got horrible reviews. And this painting, Impression Sunrise by Monet, which was also painted from en fleur, was what gave them their name. One of the critics started saying, these Impressionists, based on the name of this painting, so that happens. He would paint light, as Flip was talking about. His idea was to paint light. You weren't painting things. He would think you quite mad that you were painting things. He would line up 5, 6, 10 canvases and paint the same thing, and if it was more than an hour, he would change and paint on the next canvas, because he said you can't paint more than an hour in outdoors because you're painting something that wasn't there anymore, because you were painting light that isn't there anymore. So you get haystacks and haystacks and haystacks and haystacks. These are not pictures of haystacks to Monet. These are pictures of light. He built a laboratory south of Paris in a place called Giverny, which you probably saw if you've seen the movie Midnight in Paris. And when you go there, you immediately understand what it's about. It's not about water lilies, it's not about water, it's not about trees with colorful leaves, it's about light. It's a laboratory for light, and for the rest of his life he would paint that water garden over and over and over and over again. He was so fascinated with this, with capturing the moment, that when his wife Camille died, the color of blue she was turning was so interesting and different to him that he grabbed his brushes and his canvas and he had to capture what Camille Monet looked like on her deathbed. You know, his life companion, and that's what he's thinking at the time, is this won't happen again. She's not going to ever be that color again. So, and when you see this, I don't know if you guys can see it, but when you see this painting in person, it looks like it was painted in about 1.5 minutes. It's amazing, and he was a fast painter anyway. His best friend was Renoir. Here Renoir's about 55. He wanted to capture life in Paris, and so he did this, the Luncheon of the Cannoneers. That seated guy with the hat on is another Impressionist painting, Gustave Caillebotte. We'll talk about him a little bit later. And this is Dancing on Omar at the Moulin des Galettes, the mill of the waffle. This was a giant canvas that Monet would have to hire a kid to help him get across Montmartre in the wind, because they'd have to they could only go on Sundays because he wasn't hiring these people; these were his friends. And then he would set up the canvas and paint while they were dancing on Sundays, because there was a new invention called leisure time that had come with the Industrial Revolution. And so all these people are working people. This didn't happen before. And nobody was having fun on Sundays. You were just, waiting for the suffering to begin again. And this is one of Caillebotte's paintings. A great painter as far as realism goes, but basically what he contributed to the Impressionists is he had money. He was a banker. And so when one of them was just about to starve, he would buy one of their paintings. And basically, we wouldn't have those paintings now if it weren't for him, probably. So if you need to go, the rest of them can, it's okay. That's Caillebotte when he's older, in his 40s. This is one of his famous paintings, The Floor Scrapers. Interesting thing about what he did, and this is something Flip and I were talking about yesterday, is this is a photographic angle. This is totally not something that you would see unless you were sort of looking to capture something in a second. He's on a ladder. You don't paint on a ladder, and this is also a photographic angle. This is thrown back, it's wide angle, with a compression in the front of it. That's something that's seen through a lens. This is a new thing that he's doing, and this is his way of doing it. Renoir is capturing life, and Monet is capturing light, and Caillebotte is sort of looking through a lens and painting what's there. It's interesting, because there is photography at the time, but you have to sort of look at the paintings to see. Degas was a dick. He doesn't get a very big part in the book because he's a dick. He painted these dancers. These dancers were very pretty, and he did wonderful paintings and drawings. The thing about him is he kind of didn't like human beings. He fought with the other Impressionists all the time. And in the 1890s, when anti-Semitism became a huge party in Paris, he was a big proponent of it, which was a problem. Oh, there's Renoir's wife. I don't know what I was supposed to be talking about now. And here's his Children of the Corn painting. Anyway, I was supposed to stop talking about Degas. The book, I'm really unaccustomed to talking about a book that's not going to be around for 6 months. Usually I talk about it and you guys all go, oh, I can't wait to read that, and then you can buy it and go home and read it. Well, you can't. I have 2 copies that I'm going to give to you guys tonight, and that's sort of it until April. But I'll see you guys all in April, and I'll have figured out this whole talk by then, and there won't be slides, and it'll be awesome. Anyway, Renoir, in my book, he goes, well, I like big butts. I cannot lie. And he did. Mary Cassatt, the American Impressionist, had written a couple of times in letters that, as Renoir was older, and this is, after the turn of the century, he's like, he does nothing but paint fat girls. And she was really mad about it. This is my hero of the Impressionists. Is one of the, not as well known as the others, this work certainly isn't, Camille Pissarro. He's the oldest of them. He's in his 30s when they started in 1863. And he becomes sort of a mentor to all of them. He's a Caribbean Jew, so he, here he is with Cézanne. But he would be the one that would say to Auguste Renoir, hey, maybe you should simplify your palette a little bit. He'd paint alongside of all of them. And always sort of like the benevolent uncle. But when Seurat, and this was probably one of, these aerial views of Paris are some of his best work. The reason he's painting these is he's a Jew, and he looks like a Jew. And he can't go out in the streets of Paris in 1895 because people will spit on him. So he sits in his hotel room, high above the streets, and he paints these. And they turn out to be his best work, but it's not for a good reason. You know, and this was, supposedly Renoir would give Degas all kinds of shit about being an anti-Semite because specifically their mentor, Camille Pissarro, was a Jew. But despite being the oldest of them all, Pissarro is the only one that follows Seurat, who is the same age as his son, half of his age, into pointillism. And this is, again, color, pure color, putting dot next to dot. It's based on some bullshit science, actually. It's a big painting. That's in Chicago, too. And these paintings took years and years, but Pissarro actually followed Seurat. This is a Pissarro painting into pointillism. Vincent Van Gogh was influenced by color theory, and there's a letter to his brother about this very simple painting where he chooses every single color on purpose, nothing by accident. You know, the yellow affects the emotions this way, the purple affects the emotions this way. Theosophy was the science that they supposedly were going by. But it's interesting because I always had this idea of this out-of-control madman, and he was so deliberate.